She pounded on my front door like she was the sheriff of the whole block, yelling loud enough to shake the windows. "Open up, HOA sent me to inspect your illegal renovation." I hadn't even seen this woman before, and yet she was hollering my name out like I was her assistant who'd just clocked in late. Before I could even get a word in, she shoved a clipboard in my face and hissed, "Cops are already on their way. You're in big trouble." And the way she grinned when she said it, it was that kind of smile you see right before a schoolyard bully knocks your lunch into the dirt. Man, my stomach just clenched up, especially because my little girl was peeking from the hallway, eyes wide, not saying a word. Not 30 seconds later, 2 patrol cars came tearing down the streetlights, flashing sirens off, but all business, and I swear Karen clapped her hands together like she was calling her puppies. "Arrest him! He's refusing HOA orders!" she screeched, almost bouncing up and down on my porch before the officers had even unbuckled their seatbelts. One cop's hand slid down to his belt. The other one just stared at my porch like he expected to find a meth lab or a buried body or something. My heart hammered so hard I could feel it in my throat, but I kept my cool. See, Karen thought she was dealing with some clueless neighbor. She had no clue whose house she'd stormed into or what was about to step out that front door behind me. The officers walked up, all business hands still hovering near their sides. Karen scurried up next to them like their manager, whispering way too loud for a whisper. "He's hiding illegal tools in the garage, probably building something dangerous. He's a threat, I'm telling you." The older officer narrowed his eyes, ready to start the whole third-degree routine, but before he got a chance, the front door behind me opened with a click that sounded a lot like fate. The air just shifted, heavy, tense, almost electric. And then my wife walked out, cool as a mountain breeze, wearing her full uniform badge, catching the porch light, her whole posture straight and sharp like she'd just come off a shift running the command room. Karen's mouth literally dropped open so fast she almost lost her clipboard. The officers froze, just locked up mid-step, their eyes bouncing from my wife to me and back, like they'd suddenly realized they were in the wrong movie. My wife didn't even raise her voice. She just eyed Karen and said, "Calm as you please. Is this the woman claiming authority over my house?" Karen stumbled back, hand shaking as she jabbed a finger at me. He's violating HOA rules. You need to detain him right now." My wife stepped forward, slow and steady, the kind of walk that makes everyone else instinctively back up. The cops straightened like rookies caught napping in training. And just like that, the whole mood flipped. You could see Karen's confidence draining away her face, going pale as it finally clicked. She wasn't in control anymore. No, this isn't fair. I called you," she barked, snapping her fingers at the cops like she was calling her own personal security detail. But neither officer looked her way now. Their attention was glued to my wife, waiting for her to say the word. My wife crossed her arms, voice barely above a whisper, but I swear it landed harder than a gavel. "Before anyone makes another mistake, I need to know why you're at my home without a warrant." One officer cleared his throat, suddenly sheepish. "Ma'am, we were told there was a safety violation and a refusal to comply." My wife raised an eyebrow. "By who?" The cop hesitated, glanced at Karen. Karen jumped in front of him, practically yelling, "By me, I'm in charge of the HOA Safety Board." She tried to look important, but my wife just cut her off razor sharp. "There is no HOA Safety Board in this neighborhood." Karen froze, and the two officers exchanged one of those looks. Sharp, quick, oh no. My wife stepped closer, voice dropping lower. "So either you're impersonating an authority, or you called the police under false claims." Karen's breath hitched like she'd swallowed a wasp. I was just trying to keep the community safe," she sputtered, but even the officers were done with her story. They turned toward her, hands at the ready on her side of the mess, now not mine. Now standing there with the truth about to drop, I could see Karen's whole act starting to crumble. She looked from my wife to the cops and back, desperate for an escape. My wife gave me a quick, subtle nod, and that was my cue. I pulled out my phone, thumbed the play button. Up popped security footage, Karen stomping up my driveway, posting fake notices, arguing with neighbors, even trying to shove one of my guests off my lawn. The cop's eyes widened. Karen looked like she'd seen a ghost. That's impossible," she whispered. I leaned in a little, just enough for her to smell the truth. "Everything you see happened on my property. And that HOA you claim to represent doesn't exist. Not here." The officer started radioing in for verification. Karen staggered back, mumbling, You can't do this." My wife slipped up next to me, her hand settling gently on my shoulder, voice cool as steel. "Watch me." The power dynamic flipped so hard you could practically hear the gears grind in Karen's brain. Just moments ago, she'd called the shots. Now she was the deer in the headlights, and every neighbor within earshot was about to see her get run over by her own scheme. Karen's knees wobbled. She tried to slink off the porch, but the officers stepped in close enough to block her not touching her, just making sure she knew there was nowhere to go. She tried to argue, mouth opening, but my wife raised her hand, cutting her off mid-sentence. "You're done here." Karen's face twisted with pure panic. "No, I run this neighborhood. People need rules." Her voice cracked. I shook my head, still showing that footage. One officer voice, calm but steady, finally spoke. "Ma'am, you're under investigation for impersonating an authority and filing false reports. Anything you say can be used against you." Karen started looking around for backup, but all she saw was the hard truth: nobody on her side. My wife alone held the whole street in check. Then out of nowhere, Karen made a grab for the clipboard, probably hoping to tear up her own evidence or just cause confusion, but my wife was a beat faster, snatched it away, voice slicing through the chaos. "Hands off. This ends now." Karen stood there frozen, her fake power vanishing right in front of the audience she'd tried to control. And just as I thought she couldn't dig herself any deeper, she suddenly lunged for the porch railing, shrieking, He's hiding dangerous weapons! You have to arrest him!" Her voice had gone completely shrill, to the point where the neighbors who'd been peeking through their blinds actually gasped. My wife didn't miss a beat. She turned to the officer, still calm. "Check his house all you want. You won't find anything illegal." The officer hesitated but nodded, recognizing a false alarm when he saw one. Karen's panic was written all over her, but the best was yet to come. From across the street, one of my quieter neighbors, a guy who barely ever speaks, stood up on his porch and shouted, "Hey, that HOA letter you left on my door, totally fake. I got it all on camera." The whole block could see now Karen's house of cards was about to get bulldozed. Karen looked like she was about to faint. Phones were up everywhere, recording every second as she unraveled. "I was just trying to help," she mumbled, voice cracking with every lie. My wife stepped up close enough for only Karen to hear, helping by threatening my family and calling the police under false pretenses. For a second, the whole world seemed to pause as Karen's shoulders sagged. The officer took out his pad. "Ma'am, we'll need formal statements. Your impersonation will be investigated." Now Karen looked at me, then at my wife, then at the growing crowd of neighbors, all with their phones out, all quietly savoring every awkward moment. And just when it seemed like Karen might finally get away, fate decided to sprinkle on a little extra. She tried to run to her car parked dead center in my driveway, blocking me in, only to find out it wouldn't start. The engine just coughed, let out a weak puff of smoke, then died completely. A couple of kids down the street started laughing, pointing at the drama. Karen's face went paper white. Everything she'd tried to control: my house, the police, even the narrative, was slipping straight through her fingers. Standing next to my wife, we shared a look. This wasn't just about tonight. This was a turning point for Karen and a lesson that was about to go public. Karen slammed her palms down on her hood, howling in frustration, but her car wouldn't budge. Neighbors were gathering in groups now, some whispering, some openly filming, all watching her world collapse. She spun around, finger out, accusing me. "You did this. You sabotaged me." I kept my mouth shut, just letting her tantrum speak for itself. My wife squeezed my shoulder, giving Karen a stare so steady even the officers stood a little straighter. But the best twist was yet to come. One of the patrol officers, cool as you please, walked over to Karen's car, popped the hood, and just shook his head. "Battery's dead. Looks like it's been tampered with." Karen lost all color in her face. "No, that's impossible," she cried, "but nobody bought it." The neighbors started murmuring justice was working overtime tonight. I couldn't help myself. I leaned in, voice low. "Funny how things stop working when you threaten the wrong people." Karen's mouth moved, but no words came out. In that moment, you could see it click. She wasn't just losing a petty power struggle. She'd lost every ounce of control she ever thought she had. The threats, the fake authority, the angry calls, they all evaporated right in front of a crowd that had seen her exposed and powerless. As the officers called for backup to process the mess, Karen finally understood this wasn't just embarrassment. This was the start of her undoing, and there'd be no more hiding behind a clipboard or a made-up title. And if I'm being honest, that night taught me something I probably should have learned sooner. When you let bullies run unchecked, especially the ones who make up rules and push folks around with a smile, they only grow bolder until someone finally stands up. Sometimes the only way to stop a bully is to let them dig their own hole and let the whole community see them fall in. So yeah, that night, justice didn't come from some big speech or a badge. It came from a quiet stand, a little courage, and the whole neighborhood finally seeing the truth on camera, no less. I guess the real question is, where do you draw the line? When does standing your ground become the only right thing to do? And when folks like Karen show up in your life, what would you do? Would you back down, or would you let the whole street see what justice really looks like? Drop your thoughts below. Was I right to let it all play out, or should I have stepped in sooner? Ever had a Karen try to run your life? Share your story. Let's talk about where justice ends and karma begins.
Cảm ơn các bạn đã xem video.